Okay, I think we're gonna make a start. So good evening, everybody, and happy Chinese New Year, happy New Year. So welcome to this actually final celebration event of the Confucius Institute for Business London at LSE. My name is Catherine Xiang. I'm the UK director of the Confucius Institute for Business London, and it's great to see everybody here to join us for this final celebration event, which is a business talk. So for those of you who do not know Confucius Institute for Business London so well, we are the first institute in the world focused on business. What we try to do is to help local business community to communicate effectively with Chinese counterparts. So we do that through, of course, business Chinese training, as well as cultural awareness training and a range of bespoke events and also executive program training. So this is what we do. And today we're here to continue to celebrate the Chinese New Year. As some of you probably know, the celebration actually lasts for 2 weeks. And this Friday will be marked the ending of the 2-week celebration of the Chinese New Year with Lantern Festival. So you already have some really nice Chinese dessert on that day. So today's event is recorded. If I could ask you to unmute yourself during the talk. So basically, we don't have interruption noises for our wonderful speaker. And so I will then move on to take the opportunity to actually formally introduce our amazing speaker today. He's a very successful entrepreneur. So we have Mr. Biao Wang with us today. And he's the founder of Buckingham Wealth, a company that provides advice and consultancy on realization and growth of business opportunity between China and the UK. He's a UK MBA graduate in international business studies, and he was educated and worked in the world of commerce in China before coming to Britain. With an extensive network in Chinese business connections and combining his Chinese background and multinational work experience, he's well placed to bridge the business knowledge between both East and West culture. So Biao is a specialist China business consultant to SCAI Consultancy Group, a member of the board of directors at Stage Green Production Film Limited, and founder of also 2 bespoke tailoring companies. So during the COVID-19 lockdown in 2020, that's one of the reasons we're here, he decided to write his memoirs, and these now being published, the book is called Journey to the West, A Long March from Eastern Dream to Western Reality. And that tells the story of his experience growing up from a rural village in China, and then his path to establish himself as a successful business person in the UK. And so today we're here to hear him to talk about his journey, about his book. So if we have the plan is that he's going to talk about 30 minutes, and then we're going to open the floor for Q&A. And so if you have any questions throughout the talk, please feel free to use the chat function if you wish, and we will pick some of the questions later. If not, we will leave some time towards the end for the Q&A anyway. So over to you, Biao.
All right. Okay. 大家晚上好. Good evening, everyone. I hope all of you keeping well during this COVID-19 lockdown. I would like to thank Catherine for inviting me today to give a talk about my recently published book. As Catherine said, Journey to the West, A Long March from Eastern Dreams to Western Reality, which tells the story of my experience of growing up in a poor rural farming village in China and the path to establishing myself in the UK. So I better just tell you a little bit about myself. So I was born and grew up in a small, impoverished rural village in Ningbo. So Ningbo is on east coast of China, not far from Shanghai. I started a primary school a year later than my peers, as my family did not have much money and could not afford the education fees at that time. Later, my elder sister gave up her schooling and started working at the age of 15 to help my family pay for me to stay on at the school. So with their help, I managed to get a place at the university in China. After university, I worked in Shanghai, Shaoxing, and Hangzhou before coming to study in the UK. I initially did a BBA degree in business administration in London, and then an MBA degree in international business. To be honest, it was not really easy studying a foreign language abroad, especially the culture and the English language. And I quickly realized that the English I had learned in China was in many ways different to how British people talk on a day-to-day basis. I'll give you examples. The first week when I arrived in the UK, my mom sent a small parcel to me from China. The postman knocked the door. When I opened the door, he said, "Hello, mate, all right?" So I was very confused and I didn't know what he was saying. Was he asking me a question? And who or what was mate? The only mate I knew at that time was coffee mate. And why would he be asking about my coffee? Of course, I found out later, actually, this is a traditional London greeting, very different to what I have been taught in China. When you meet someone for the first time, we should always say, "Hello, sir," or "Madam, how do you do?" So obviously, what I had learned was a thing of the past. I also remember being taken to London East End, hearing someone making references to someone being their old China, only to be told it actually means my old friend. So you can see that I'm still learning new English expressions almost every day. Also, there are many cultural differences between the UK and China. For example, not long after I arrived in the UK, I was taken out for dinner by some British friends. Biao, one of my British friends, whispered to me, "You can't slurp your soup like that." Unlike in China, where it is normal to make noises while you eat to show your appreciation for good food. So I was introduced to the notion of silent dining without accompanying noises of satisfaction. Following the completion of my MBA degree in 2004, I set up a consulting business in the UK to help companies understand difference between British and Chinese business culture. I was pleased to find there was even more demand for the service than I had thought. And I have since worked in many countries, including Malta, Germany, Croatia, Russia, and of course, China. In fact, I go to China 3 or 4 times a year on business. Over the years, my business has expanded, as Catherine said, to cover other areas, including bespoke pairings, film production, and a steel business. So why did I write the book? Friends and the business connections I met through my work often told me that they found my life story to be very interesting. My upbringing in China, how I came to the UK and set up businesses here. They told me it was unusual to meet people with my background. They were always keen to find out more. These comments made me think about writing a book on my experiences, and so the idea was born. However, with all my time taken up with work, I never had the time to pursue that thought. Then, of course, the COVID-19 happened last March. Like everyone else, I was in lockdown at home, unable to travel, not able to go to China or attend business meetings except online. I wondered how I could use this time, and thoughts began to formulate about writing a book about my life. I could maybe turn this crisis into an opportunity. And if I didn't write it now, then when would I have the time? So that was how I came to the decision to write the book. However, it was quite a daunting task because I had never written a book before. And of course, the English is also my second language. The first hurdle I remember is where to start and what do I put in it? That was the hardest bit. I can remember looking at the blank Word document, thinking, how do I write this story? And what do I write about? Apparently, this thought often goes through most writers' mind, including experienced writers. It was quite unlike any business project that I have had taken on. It took a while to get my thoughts together to create a structure for the book and what to include and what not to include. I was in my early 40s, maybe a little early to write your life story, but I realized my experiences to date were probably more eventful than the most. I start to think about these things. What had I achieved? Where did I start my life? How did I get to be living in Leighton Buzzard, Bedfordshire? Those small seeds developed the more I thought things over. So I began thinking more about how to put all that into a book form. Ideas developed, and slowly words began to flow, in some cases, and very slowly. Um, I contact my family and the relatives and interview them to get history and a background. I obviously didn't want to miss anything out. The book is not just about my life, but also the life of my immediate ancestors, my parents, and my grandparents. Writing the book also became a learning experience for me. While researching into my family's lives, I discovered things I didn't know about, such as the escape my mother's parents made by boat from Japanese bombing in 1941. Also, the story of my paternal grandfather chasing after bandits who had kidnapped a young child from the village in China and being shot at as he chased them. I was fortunate to write the book when I did. As sadly, my father died in October last year, just as I was finishing the book, and I had not decided to write the book, I would not have had the opportunity to talk with him about his early life whilst growing up in China in 1950s and 60s. I learned so much and I became that much closer to him. And it made me appreciate even more how fortunate I was to make so many major changes in my life for the good. After completing my first draft, I sent it to some of my friends for their comments and received many. One comment I received often was that I should include more about my personal feelings and emotions. Generally, Chinese people are not very good at showing their emotions, and in this case, writing about them. I'm grateful for my friends for nagging and encouraging me to be more open and honest in my writing about my feelings. I must admit, the book did go through several edits before I was ready to publish it, but apparently that's not unusual, so I'm told. Since publishing the book last month, I have had some very positive reviews. I would like to take a moment to read you one of them. Journey to the West is also a timely reminder at a time when the emerging power of China is seen as a threat to the West, that we are all one species with the same needs and desire. And through his storytelling, Biao Wang gives China and the Chinese a human face. Journey to the West is a cultural bridge as well as a thoroughly enjoyable and absorbing read. Now, I'd like to give you a reading from the book, which will take about 10 minutes. Fortunately, I have been working with Laurie Temple, a wonderful British actor who has narrated an audio version of the book, so I don't need to read it myself. I would like to play you the first chapter, Small Boy, Big Mountains. But let me turn this on.
Journey to the West, a long march from Eastern dream to Western reality. Chapter 1, Small Boy, Big Mountains. Your son will have a much better life if he's somewhere else, somewhere far away from the family. The words of the fortune teller rang out clear and concise. It can't have been an easy thing to hear. After all, any mother or father wants only the best for their child. They wouldn't have expected my future life satisfaction to be contingent on my being far away from them. And not only did she, the fortune teller, state this before my first birthday, but the same prediction was repeated as I grew older, 2 or 3 separate times. In China, the word of fortune tellers is taken incredibly seriously. Virtually all Chinese babies are taken to have their destinies predicted, and I was no different. My birthday happened to fall on an auspicious day, 20th of October, 1978, which in the lunar calendar is actually the 19th of September, and as such was the goddess of mercy and compassion, Guan Yin Renunciation Day. Guan Yin is the Chinese name of the Buddhist saint known as Avalokitesavara, and the Renunciation Day of Guan Yin also falls on the 19th day of the 9th month in the lunar calendar. On this day, Guan Yin became a bodhisattva, a Buddhist saint. Many people told my parents that this would bring me good fortune, and that I was blessed and destined to have a long and happy life. I'm not a superstitious person, and I've been able to formulate my own thoughts, so I'm reluctant to rely on something as arbitrary as astrology, the time or date or place of my birth. These are interesting questions nonetheless. Was I born naturally on life's good side? Would fate have smiled on me, whatever I decided to do? It may be the case that my personality facilitated a measure of success, or perhaps it was the choices my parents made at crucial junctures. But generally, I don't subscribe to the notion of luck. I knew from my boyhood that if I wanted to achieve something, I would have to do it myself, with hard work and perseverance. So was I lucky? As a young boy, I certainly didn't feel it. Born in the village of Fengshui-Shuan in Ningbo, Zhejiang province, China, my early life and that of my sister and parents was one of hardship. We were desperately poor and constantly struggled to get enough food on the table. This was doubly hard to take, considering that even though we were always short of food, my parents oversaw the operation and maintenance of just over an acre of farmland. In the UK, farming is generally a lucrative industry. In China, it's considered low on the social and economic scale. My paternal grandmother, who lived with us, would often walk down to the river and bring home the dead fish that floated on its surface. When steamed at a high temperature, any poison in the fish was killed off, making them safe to eat. But the house smelled of rotting fish while it was cooking. I distinctly recall in those early years picking up sugar canes which were discarded in the street and chewing on the stalks, a risky activity considering they'd all been in somebody else's mouth. But people make do when they're hungry. They have to. Nonetheless, a child's imagination and his freedom to roam can make up for poverty. We were fortunate to live in an area largely untouched by the industrial expansion, which was happening elsewhere in China at the time. The most important time of year for us was the harvest season, during which, as a small child, I was sent to stay with my mother's parents, who lived about 8 miles away. Being raised in a family of 4, I wasn't much help until about the age of 7. I distinctly remember telling myself that I needed to be stronger, that I needed to observe what was happening during the harvest and to help my parents. I remember once, at the age of 5, feeling homesick while staying with my mother's parents and deciding to set off home, determined to help in any way I could. What I hadn't bargained for were the mountains that lay across my route. These 2 giants reared up against the sky, covered with wild vegetation, brooks and streams, and huge boulders. I was rescued by the army. There was an army camp in the mountains, and a worker from the camp found me on his way home. I was exhausted by this point, not to mention terrified. "What are your parents' names?" he asked me. Sniffling, I just managed to tell him. He realized he knew who they were and promptly took me home. For us children, the mountains were our sanctuary. On Sundays, we'd travel up into the wilderness with our backpacks, hauling ourselves up the punishing ascent and carrying with us woks, sweet potatoes, and rice cakes. We'd dig for wild vegetables and cook on the woks we'd brought from home. In the river, we'd move stones tentatively with our feet, plucking wriggling crabs from their undersides and catching prawns. We'd build fires and sit around them, chatting, eating, and playing. One of my favorite games was hide and seek. It seemed our options were limitless. We shared this green space with a variety of animals too, some deadlier than others. Alongside the rabbits and birds, there were poisonous snakes, wild boar, pangolin, wolves, foxes, and even, though I never saw one myself, jaguars. Many years later, I'd return to the wild valleys of my childhood and stand in awe of the changes they'd undergone. The mountains were destroyed, the rock hacked away to make room for factories and flats. This once untamed, endless playground had been razed to the ground. I stared around me, amazed at the transformation and the logistical power it must have taken, but also saddened at the loss of such natural beauty. Today, in March 2020, my surroundings could not be more different from those of my early childhood. I sit at home, isolating from the coronavirus COVID-19, the newly discovered infectious disease, which currently has no developed vaccine, as a consequence of which we are all advised to stay at home. In these tumultuous, uncertain times, I'm afforded a moment to reflect on those early experiences. I watch from my window as the world seems to have slowed down. Leighton Buzzard is a quiet place, calm and contained. It is a haven from the busy nature of my life before now, from meetings to negotiations and international travel. The journey on which I embarked to get here to the UK began in June 2002. But in reality, things were set in motion much earlier. With a good education and a place at university, it was expected that I would enter into a profession, become a doctor or a lawyer perhaps, or take an office job not too far from home, for example, in a management position, working for a large Chinese company. I never expected my life to expand and diversify as much as it did. But as soon as I realized there was a possibility for something more, I wanted it. And this, more than anything else, is why I don't believe what the fortune teller said. However, she was right in the end that my success was contingent on being far from home. Yet this success was only made possible through a hope, a desire for an alternative, and a love of language. Hours in the library spent on endless revision and books filled with indecipherable English grammar trumped any notion of fate. I could have stayed behind in the village at the age of 10. Instead, I chose to leave, and the next episode of my life began. I could have spent my adolescence roaming these same mountains I'd loved as a child, completing middle school, then leaving to help my father on the farm. I chose not to, and I have no doubt that this was the right decision. I couldn't have spent my adult years there, watching the wildlife and spending Sundays by the brooks. In any case, they no longer exist. That life, once so precious to me, has opened windows onto other vistas. This book is the story of those broadening horizons.
I hope you find that interesting. Yeah, so I recently published a book on Amazon. It was a good way actually to get it distributed worldwide very quickly. So it's more like so if you go through the traditional publisher, it's slower, but Amazon is much quicker because, and so far it has been bought. So my book has been sold in the UK, Ireland, USA, Canada, Germany, New Zealand, Japan, Malaysia, and Singapore. And I'm pleased to share with you that the book has ranked #1 for 6 days, but was ranked #1, for 6 days in the new release section of cultural and regional biography on Amazon UK. So it's not 7 days, just 6 days. Yeah. So I mentioned earlier that I'm constantly learning new English words, different expressions, and so forth. Just before today's event, I was about to start. I happened to mention to an English friend that I was giving a talk about my book. He said, "Are you going to do it off the cuff?" Which, needless to say, I thought must be some kind of a tailoring phrase, just to show you never stop learning. One of the many reasons why I love living in the good of the UK. Finally, I would like to conclude by reading a short extract from the book. It remains one of the great inequalities of the world that some children are born light years ahead of others. They may come from more stable homes, from wealthy homes, from homes with domestic staff and tutors. Everything is either more streamlined and more conducive to educational and career success. Others will come from one-bedroom huts with neither running water nor electricity, with little chance of a good education and a little time to do anything other than work. The child born into a rich family will no doubt progress at a faster rate and develop the sort of self-assurance that comes from stability. This is the case wherever you are from. It is as true of communist societies as of capitalist ones. I have traveled the world and seen these inequalities. I have witnessed the problems such different starting blocks can bring. But if I learned anything, it is that success is possible, whatever your situation and however your life begins. I hope that this story, my story, will prove inspirational and that it will encourage others to dream big, take a plunge, and use whatever resources are available. If a small, poor boy fishing for prawns on a lake in Ningbo can do it, then so can you. Thank you for listening, and I will be happy to answer any questions you have.
Great. Thank you very much, Biao.
Right.
I definitely pick up the importance of language, culture, and education. And that's what we do at the Confucius Institute. Okay, great. Let me just open the floor. So if anyone have any questions or comments, just feel free to unmute yourself and introduce yourself and then ask your question and provide your comments. If you want to give me a hint, I can, because I need to see, we have like almost 2 screens to see people. So anyone would like to ask the first question? Yeah, Roger, please go ahead.
Right.
You need to unmute yourself.
Beg your pardon.
Yeah.
I'm in there. Biao, I think it was quite interesting to hear about your start through Buckingham Wealth. And I think you mentioned about the businesses that you set up, which I think was quite intriguing, really. And it's the diversification, really, because there's quite a massive difference between, I think, your bespoke tailoring, stage green productions, and a metal business. I'm just intrigued as to how you decided to pick those. I'm sure your expertise in gaining your MBA would have helped, but why the diversification? Because that's quite wide.
Yeah.
Excellent question. Go ahead.
That's a very good questions. Thank you, Roger. I think from my personal experience, one of the important entrepreneurial skills is that in order to minimize risks in the business, it is vital not to put all your eggs in one basket. That's what I learned at the early stage. But that's also the main reason why I have quite diverse business. And of course, carrying out a detailed research is key to a successful project. Because so when you find a potential project, you have to do a lot of research. I think I find that's very, very important for me, so that I won't waste the time. For me, it's also important to build a reliable and professional team, and each company has a dedicated elite team to run it. So that's also important for me as well. Then I think what has been particularly helpful for me is my interest in news and current affairs, as it has prompted me to see new gaps in the market and the business opportunities. I learned the perseverance is very important in order to succeed in business, as people don't always say yes the first time you ask. The other things, and I also realized the importance of being in the right place at the right time. It is essential to take an opportunity when you see it. So I think that's what I've learned. I hope I answered the questions.
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Roger. Anyone else?
I have a question.
Yeah, Mervyn, please go ahead.
But Biao Wang, thank you for your story about your childhood and writing it in the form of a book. I'm also a published author, and I know how important the title is. Why did you choose the title Journey to the West?
Oh, right. Yeah, that's a very good question as well. Because I think it's for me is the I grew up in China in the East, and when you read the book, you know it. Then when I always had a desire to come to the West, to explore and to see and to learn. So I always have a journey. When I was in the middle school, I already planned it, although we didn't have the money, but always I hold up the desire and hold up the hope that I wanted to come to the West. So that's why I feel Journey to the West, the journey from East to West, and also on the journey, the friends I met, And I think that's why I think the title, The Journey to the West, is very appropriate for the book. And I think it's part of my desire. I always wanted, when I was actually in the middle school, I always wanted to learn English and I want to see the West. So yeah, so that's why I come up with the name, with The Journey to the West. And also the subtitle, I think one of the things is important because someone told me as well, because Journey to the West, it might be America, because for a British reader, they think it's journey from the UK to America. So that's why I thought I better put a subtitle there. A long march. So a long march from Eastern dreams to Western reality. So then hopefully people will understand actually from the journey is from the East to the West. So it's not from the UK to America. So that's the main reason actually. I hope it's the right title.
It's also a classic. It's also a classic in Chinese culture. Journey to the West.
Yeah, the Monkey King story. You're right. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mervyn.
Okay.
I think everyone's shy.
No, I'm not shy.
Go ahead.
I know you've made certain changes in the way that you live your life, because Leighton Buzzard, wherever that might be, is somewhat different to where you grew up in China. But what strikes me is that someone who's a complicated business person in many different fields, as the previous speaker just said, growing up in the countryside, or as I would call the middle of nowhere, and then moving to Leighton Buzzard, which of course is very, very similar. Why is it, or is that the reason why you like to be in Leighton Buzzard? Because somehow or another, it reminds one of being back in China in a countryside atmosphere, albeit without sugar canes.
Very interesting question. Yes, I always like the countryside, and I always enjoy the nature. And I think in the book you pick up a lot of story that I enjoy being on the mountains and picking up wild fruits and the vegetables, and then I have to judge which one's edible, which one's poison. So which I learned actually from my grandma. Well, yeah, I think it's for me, moving to the UK and living in the countryside. I have the opportunity to live in the central London, but I choose Leighton Buzzard because one is Leighton Buzzard is close to central London, so it's about 29 minutes, they said, as by the train to Euston. And but Leighton Buzzard is just close to the countryside, and there's a canal there as well. And if I walk a few minutes, it's just countryside. And also there are a lot of animals, because in my book, I mentioned a lot of animals there as well. So some of the animals quite, remind me of my childhood in China. So yeah, for me, I think countryside is quiet. And also because I also got my garden, so I pretend to be like when I was a child, I worked in the farm. So I can do some farming on my back of my garden to relax. So yeah, I think you're right. It's the village in China and Leighton Buzzard. It's for me. I still fulfill one of my dreams, and to be childhood again. And
Okay, so you can't get rid of that. What is it that you absolutely wanted to and achieved in getting rid of, having come from such a different environment, i.e. China compared with England?
Yeah, I think get rid of. I think the because of the family. Well, I think you read that you heard the first chapter. So the family were poor. So we were so poor, and so the poverty, I think, gave me the motivation actually to improve my situation and create a better future, especially for my family. So I think it's for me, it's just sometimes I think you can turn the negative situation into something positive. So I think that's really important.
So you took advantage of the poverty and consequently became highly successful. So the poverty, having poverty, in fact, turned out to be rather useful.
Yes, yeah, that's for me actually. Yeah, if I born with a with a silver spoon in my mouth, I might not be like, well, I cannot praise myself, but I might not have as many businesses as I have now. Yeah,
Makes sense.
I hope I answered your question.
Silver spoon in my mouth. Yeah.
Great, thanks. Okay, Anna, you're next. Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Catherine. And thank you, Biao Wang. That's been really interesting to hear you speak. So I think you mentioned in your reviews at the beginning about talking about a cultural bridge. And I just wanted to get your views on how important you think it is, particularly at the moment, to demonstrate the human face of this cultural bridge, and in particular in the UK.
Yeah, I think it's to be honest, in the UK, the media, for me, it's always talk about, if you check about the news about China, always negatives. But I see, and also all about the politics. So my book, I feel my book is more putting, the China and the Chinese human face. At least they know how the Chinese people live, and especially in 1980s, 90s. So I feel hopefully in the future that the image of China will be more positive in the UK and especially in the West as well. But China is growing so fast, and so also I talk about when I was growing up in 1980s, 1990s. At that time, you see, our family was so poor, but since 2000, China, I think it's about 100 million people pull out from the poverty. But in the West, they never talk about that. So that's why I feel the cultural bridge is so important. And hopefully the British people or British government will understand the Chinese culture. And of course, vice as well. And hopefully Chinese people and the Chinese government understand the Western culture as well. So that's why for me, in my business, consulting between China and the UK is so important. Before I take my British clients to China, I always train them about the Chinese culture. And also if I train them, they understand the culture. When they are in China, when they see something, then they realize, oh yes, that's a part of Chinese culture. It should be fine. But if I don't train them, then some of the British clients will be upset when they're in China. Sometimes something happened, they feel it's why the Chinese people do this or that. But actually, it's because of cultural difference. So that's why I focus on culture quite a lot. When I take British delegation to China, I always train them before we go to China, so that they can understand the Chinese culture. And then, more likely, these British companies, they are more likely to be successful in China because they understand the Chinese culture. But it's the same now. We are doing more business actually for Chinese people now investing in the UK. For the last 10 years, I think it's more British doing business in China, but now the more Chinese people coming here. So we're doing the same thing now. We're training the Chinese people, business people, before they come here, make sure they understand British culture. Yeah. So that's why I think a cultural bridge is really, really important. Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Anna.
Okay, great. Do we have more questions or more comments or anything? Any thoughts to share?
Is John Perry here?
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Good friends with me. Firstly, really interesting book. Really, I don't know, the style in which you write is really engaging and amazing. Just to hear your background, which after all these years I'd never known. So really interested. And for those on here, I have to say we now have a business in China, which we would never have done without Biao. So many thanks for that. But the real question, Biao, very simple. Would you ever go back and live in China again?
That's a very good question. Because I think I talked about, I go back to China 3 or 4 times every year. So yes, I think I would like to go back and live in China as well. And hopefully I can do both in the UK and China. For me, it's really important going back to China because China, actually, a lot of environment, business environment, including the language, actually, they changes as well. So I need to make sure that I make sure to go and learn. And also, I think going back to China to have a connection as well, because doing business in China, the connection is the key. So yes, I will go back and live there as well. hopefully I answered your question, John.
Visiting and going for business. The question was, would you go to live there? Ongoing.
Yeah, I think I will. Yeah. Maybe maybe after 10 years later, when I grow a little bit older, I might move back in the future, depending on the situation. Yeah, no, I think I would like to go back in China, but not in the village now, because the village where I was born is no longer exists. It's all now apartments, and the mountains gone. So I might have to live in a city when I move back to China.
Good, we've got someone to visit when we go there.
Yeah.
Okay, great. I think we probably have time for one more question. So
I have a question.
Oh yeah,
Okay.
Jenny, please go ahead.
Yeah. Hi, Mr. Wang. I'm probably the first Chinese people ask question on the floor. You've been in the UK for the past decade, maybe start from your MBA. So you must be worked here, and you have your own companies here. You probably have in your own working environment, you must have come across the different employees or colleagues, whether they coming from a Chinese background or UK background or Western background. What do you see is a key differences in the working environment where the culture did play a great, like it could be a barrier or sometimes difficulties for people to communicate, for people to understand how you see that kind of difference in the real working environment. If you're the boss, then you can see all your colleagues, if they're coming from different background, from Western, from Eastern, how that kind of differences can be bridged in the working environment.
Right, that's a great question as well, actually. So for me, it's important to, so when I have a different business project, I have to try to find the people to build a team and then run the business. So finding the right people is not easy, really. So in my book, I also talk about one of my projects, because I didn't find the right person to work with. That's why the project was failed. So working with the right partner, with the right people is, for me, is really the key as well. And you talk about the cultural difference, that's really one of the big problems, because I got business in China as well. So all the employees there in China are Chinese, so there's no Westerner there. But in the UK, actually, it's, all the business we're working actually all British, actually, and we do have American as well. So, but I think the communication is the key for me. The communication, and but we do have like weekly meetings and understand the goal of the business. And if we don't know the goal and what the direction, then yeah, we are about to fail. So for me, is really to have to find the right employees and also training them as well. So we do train, for example, the tailoring project, we do train some of our employees and to make sure they understand what the direction of the business. And in China, the management style is quite different, because when I go to China, people always call me, oh, Boss Wang. So I always ask them, I said, no, you don't need to call me Boss Wang, you just call me Biao. Because in the West, and I think employee, whatever you employ or manager, you have to be equal. So I try to use Western style in China. Actually, it's working quite well. And also I take my employees out for holidays twice every week. Not twice every year, not every week. And they really enjoyed it. So they, and from that, and I can see that less people leave the business, actually, they stick to us. And I think we build also personal relationship as well. So when I go to China, I always call them the name, they call me my name, so it's fine. So I think it's just finding the right people, and also communication. And I think for me is really important culturally. And because I think for my business, we go to China so often, and a lot of actually my employees in China, they start to understand more about the Western culture. For example, we had to meet, when we set up a meeting at 6 o'clock, then we have to be make sure we arrive at 6, because in China sometimes people late, sometimes early. So they understand, because I do a lot of cultural programs, so I normally train them as well. So they understand Western culture quite well. And for the of course my British colleagues, and I do the same. So I train them not only just the culture, but some of the language as well, Chinese language. Make sure you speak a little bit language when you go to China. Then the Chinese people respect you more because you try your best to respect the Chinese culture. So for me, yeah, I think it's a communication and building the right team is the key.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. I hope I answered that question as well.
That's very well. Yes, yeah, because I'm running a Far East community within Ernst Young. So career-wise and culture-wise, we have a big community, Chinese community within a Western company, global company. So
right, yeah,
it's the key. It's the key for us to understand, to let people to understand the cultural differences. I want to take a lead from your book, probably.
Yeah, but I think I feel that a lot of Chinese students, when they come here, they're quite shy, and they're not quite a lot. I see that quite a lot of them not very good at communication. I think because the confidence of the language. And when I came here, you'll see in my book as well. I was really not only the English is bad, my English was bad. I realized, and culturally I was so shocked. So I think for the Chinese students, when they come here looking for jobs, or I think that again the communication. So you have to present yourself. You have to communicate well to convince the employer that you are the right person.
Yes.
So I always tell the Chinese student, I think you really have the advantage, because you come here, you not only can speak English, but also you understand the Western culture. But you need to learn more, of course, when you're here. Don't mix with the Chinese students all the time, but mix with local people. And the advantage you have is also you understand the Chinese culture and the Chinese language. Also, China is growing so fast, and a lot of British companies are looking for opportunities in China. So the Chinese students can play a very important role there, actually. So yeah, that's why I think for me, as a communication is really important. Yeah.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jenny.
Thank you. So we are actually moving towards the most exciting part of the event. We're going to do a lucky draw. So we will do a combination of some voucher from the Confucius Institute for the courses, as well as signed copy from Biao's new book. So we're going to find out together who's going to be the lucky person. This person might not be here because we have 100 people signed up for the event, but we're going to find out. So I'm going to ask Biao to assist me together for the lucky draw. Okay. So let me just share my screen.
How do we do it?
1 second. I'll tell you. So can everyone see my screen? So we will give out 6 prizes in total. So from the Confucius Institute, so we've got 150 voucher for 3 people, 300 for 2 people, and 1 top prize £500 voucher for our courses. And as I mentioned, each of you would also get a copy of signed copy by Biao. So very exciting moment. So we're gonna start with the third prize. Okay. So Biao, if you tell me go, I'm gonna start the process and we'll find out about the winner. And
right.
you will be the one announce the names. Okay.
All right.
Okay. Tell me.
All right. Go now. Do I have to say stop?
It will do it. The magic will come.
All right. Okay.
Okay. Can you announce the winner of the third prize, please?
Oh, Daniel. Daniel?
Oh, someone you know. I don't know. Daniel and Elias, and also Ito.
Daniel, yeah. Elias, okay. Daniel, Aduvu, yeah.
Great. Okay. So third prize gone. Now let's move to the second prize. So £300 plus Biao's signed book.
Okay, go then.
Go.
Anya Rajini.
we have a lot of international and people from different. Yeah, it's a hard name to say, but yeah. Well, congratulations. Okay, the most exciting bit: £500 voucher and your book. Okay. All right.
Okay.
Say,
Go then.
we're ready.
Yeah, ready.
Okay, we'll see. We'll see. Hey, Neil. Neil. Okay, excellent. Well, congratulations to the winners. And then one of my colleagues will get in touch with the winners and we will tell you how you're going to claim your prize and send you a copy of Biao's excellent book. And if you want to find out more about his book, I'm sure you can find it through Amazon, right? So we can follow up with a link. And really nice to have everybody here, and happy Chinese New Year one more time. And if you also interested in follow us through the Confucius Institute, you can find us on LinkedIn, of course, our website at LSE. So really lovely to see everyone. And I wish you all the best. And I wish you enjoy the event this evening. And looking forward to seeing you all in our future events. And thank you so much, Biao, for your excellent talk. And we're all looking forward to reading your book.
Yeah.
Thank you again.
Yeah, thank you for being such a great audience, all of you. And happy Chinese New Year to you all.
Happy Chinese New Year.
Happy Chinese New Year. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye. Bye.
Bye. Bye, Biao Wang.
Bye. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.